Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason some people keep showing up day after day, no matter how hard it gets. It's not because they're smarter. It's not because they're stronger. It's because they've learned how to stay consistent. Even when everything around them is trying to pull them off track, consistency isn't about perfection. It's not about motivation. It's about something deeper, something driven by purpose. Today, I'm not here to give you hype. I'm here to give you something more powerful, the 10 secrets that will help you stay consistent no matter what. Not tricks, not shortcuts, but principles rooted in discipline, mindset, and meaning. Because when you understand why you're doing what you do, the how becomes easier. And when you align your actions with that why, consistency stops being a struggle and becomes who you are. When it comes to staying consistent no matter what, nothing is more powerful than knowing when you started in the first place. Purpose is the foundation. It's the driving force behind every action that matters. And without it, consistency becomes a struggle. Most people think consistency is about willpower or discipline. But the truth is, when you have a strong enough why, the how takes care of itself. You don't need to push yourself every single day when you're being pulled by something greater than you. That's the difference between trying to force consistency and being naturally aligned with it. Your why is your internal compass. It gives direction, clarity, and most importantly, meaning. When you know what you're working toward and why it matters to you, it becomes easier to show up even when it's hard. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop making decisions based on how you feel in the moment because you're driven by something that matters more than temporary comfort. Think about the people who wake up before the sun rises to train, to study, to build something. They're not superhuman. They've just connected deeply to a purpose that makes the sacrifice worth it. Without a why, every obstacle feels heavier. Every delay feels discouraging. Every failure feels final. But with a strong why, those same challenges become part of the path. You expect resistance, but you don't retreat from it. You learn to see the struggle as a sign that you're on the right track. That's the mental shift purpose creates. It doesn't remove the pain, but it gives it meaning. And purpose isn't always some grand world-changing vision. It can be deeply personal. It might be wanting to provide a better future for your family. It might be proving to yourself that you're capable. It might be honoring someone who believed in you. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It just has to matter to you. Because once you're clear on why you're doing something, consistency becomes less about pushing and more about aligning. You begin to structure your life around what matters instead of trying to squeeze it in between distractions. People often get stuck because they chase results without anchoring those results to something meaningful. That's why they start strong but lose steam. They were driven by excitement, not conviction, and excitement fades. Conviction sustains. Your purpose becomes the internal fuel that doesn't burn out when motivation does. That's why starting with why is the first secret, and arguably the most important one, because without it, the rest don't matter. Purpose also creates emotional resilience. When things go wrong, and they will, your why keeps you grounded. It reminds you that setbacks are part of the process, not the end of the road. It helps you make sense of struggle, which is crucial for staying consistent. People who lack a why to quit when things get uncomfortable. But those who are grounded in purpose learn to endure. They learn to adapt, to grow, to keep moving forward even when it hurts. Because their reason is bigger than their pain. And your why can evolve. It doesn't have to stay the same forever. As you grow, your purpose might shift. That's normal. What matters is staying connected to it. Checking in regularly to make sure the work you're doing still aligns with what matters most to you. That connection is what gives your effort meaning and your day's direction. So before you chase a goal, ask yourself, why does this matter to me? What am I really trying to create? What will it mean if I succeed? And what would it cost me if I gave up? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential. Because when you have a strong answer, everything else becomes simpler. Not easy, but simpler. The distractions still exist, but they lose their power. The setbacks still happen, but they don't break you. And the days when you don't feel like showing up, you still do, because your why calls you forward, even when your feelings try to hold you back. In the end, purpose isn't just about finding meaning. It's about becoming someone who lives with intention. Someone who shows up not because it's convenient, but because it's worth it. That's what it means to start with why. And that's how consistency becomes who you are, not just something you try to do. When people set goals, they often focus only on the finish line, the reward, the recognition, the result. But what truly separates those who remain consistent from those who fade away is not their obsession with the outcome, it's their love for the process. The daily effort, the boring repetitions, the invisible work that no one claps for. because that's where growth lives. That's where transformation happens. Consistency isn't born in moments of hype. It's forged in the quiet, disciplined hours when no one's watching and progress feels painfully slow. When you fall in love with the process, you stop tying your self-worth to the end result, you stop chasing quick wins and start building lasting habits. You start to understand that mastery is not a single event but a lifelong journey. It's not about doing something once and being done. It's about showing up again and again, especially when you don't feel like it. The process is what builds character. It's where you develop patience, discipline, and mental toughness. And those traits carry you far beyond any single achievement ever could. Most people quit because they get bored. The excitement wears off, and they realize that growth is slow. The honeymoon phase disappears, and they're left with the grind. But here's the truth: boredom is part of excellence. Doing the same small things over and over. Refining, adjusting, repeating. That's what leads to breakthroughs. Consistency doesn't require excitement, it requires commitment. And commitment only lasts when you embrace the process, not just the prize. The process humbles you, it reveals your weaknesses, it tests your patience, and it forces you to grow, not just in skill, but in mindset. You begin to separate your feelings from your actions. You start to show up even when the conditions aren't perfect, because you've accepted that the work matters more than the mood. This is a mindset shift that only happens when you fall in love with the process. You no longer chase a feeling, you chase a standard, and your consistency becomes a reflection of your identity, not your emotions. Falling in love with the process also means learning to find meaning in small progress. Too many people ignore the micro wins because they're obsessed with the macro result. But every rep, every practice, every uncomfortable step forward, those are victories. They're proof that you're becoming the person who can handle the outcome you want. When you only chase the result, you risk feeling like a failure every day until you get there. But when you value the process, every day becomes a success because you showed up and moved forward, even a little. This mindset protects you from burnout and discouragement. It gives you staying power. Because if your happiness only exists in the future, tied to a result, you'll always feel like you're not enough. But if you can find fulfillment in the effort, in the sweat, in the learning, then you never lose. You grow even on the hardest days. You evolve even in silence. That's what the process gives you. It's not glamorous, but it's where your resilience is built. The people we admire, the athletes, the creators, the leaders, they don't just show up for the finish line. They show up for the reps. They've learned to love the drills, the edits, the meetings, the revisions, not because they're easier for them, but because they've chosen to see the value in repetition. They've chosen to be present in the process, knowing that's where the real transformation takes place. The result is just the visible proof of all the invisible work that came before it. And here's something powerful: when you fall in love with the process, the results often come faster, not because you're rushing, but because you're consistent. You're not distracted by every shiny shortcut. You're not derailed by temporary setbacks. You stay focused. You stay grounded. You build momentum slowly, and then suddenly, that's the compound effect of consistent effort rooted in process-driven thinking. So if you want to stay consistent no matter what, stop waiting to feel excited. Stop needing to see instant results. Start falling in love with showing up, with doing the work, with getting a little better today than you were yesterday. That's how consistency becomes sustainable. That's how progress becomes inevitable. Not because you're lucky or talented, but because you've chosen to value the process more than the prize. And that choice made daily is what creates greatness in the long run. We often hear people say, "I just don't feel motivated," as if motivation is the magic ingredient that makes everything possible. But the truth is, if you're relying on motivation to keep you consistent, you're already setting yourself up to fail. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. It's tied to your emotions, your energy, your environment. One day you wake up inspired, and the next you can't even get out of bed. That's the nature of motivation. It's unpredictable, unstable, and undependable. Consistency, on the other hand, demands something much stronger. It demands discipline. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's the decision to act based on your values, not your mood. Where motivation is driven by feelings, discipline is anchored in commitment. And that makes all the difference. When you live by discipline, you become dangerous. Not because you never struggle, but because you've trained yourself to keep going regardless of the struggle. You don't wait for the perfect moment, the right vibe, or a burst of energy. You show up anyway, and that's what builds real consistency. Think about the most successful and consistent people in any field. They don't wake up every day feeling inspired. They have days when they're tired, unmotivated, frustrated, and uncertain. just like everyone else. But what sets them apart is that they don't make decisions based on those feelings. They lean into discipline. They've built routines, habits, and systems that protect their consistency, even on the worst days. They don't need to feel like it. Because they've already decided they're going to do it, discipline removes the emotion from the equation. That doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you stop letting temporary emotions dictate long-term actions. You stop negotiating with yourself every morning. You stop asking questions like, do I feel like doing this today? Because you've already answered that question when you made the commitment. And that kind of mental clarity is powerful. It simplifies your decisions, it gives you control, and it protects you from the chaos of inconsistency. There's a quiet power in showing up when you least feel like it. Those are the moments that build your identity. Not the days when it's easy, but the days when everything in you says quit and you do it anyway. That's when you prove to yourself who really are. That's when discipline takes over and motivation becomes irrelevant. You begin to shift from being someone who works hard only when it feels good to someone who works hard because it's who you are. And discipline doesn't mean being harsh with yourself. It doesn't mean perfection or punishment. It means holding yourself to a higher standard because you know what you're capable of. It means being honest with yourself about what needs to be done and choosing to do it, even when no one's watching. Discipline is an act of self-respect. It's telling yourself, I matter enough to follow through. My goals matter enough to show up. That mindset builds trust with yourself, and trust is what leads to long-term success. To stay consistent, you must train your discipline like a muscle. That means creating routines that support your goals. It means eliminating distractions that tempt you to skip your responsibilities. It means setting boundaries with yourself and others. It means building structure so you don't have to rely on daily willpower. Because willpower fades, but structure sustains. The more systems you put in place, from morning rituals to scheduled work blocks, the easier it becomes to stay disciplined without overthinking. Start small. Pick one thing you know needs to get done and do it every day, no matter what. Show yourself that you can follow through. Then build from there. Every small act of discipline creates momentum. Every day you show up, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who follows through. And with enough repetition, discipline becomes second nature. You no longer think about whether or not you'll do it. You just do it because it's who you are. So if you want to be consistent, stop chasing motivation. Let it come and go as it pleases. But don't let it control your actions. Build discipline instead. Make decisions based on who you want to become, not how you feel in the moment. Discipline isn't easy. It's not glamorous. But it's reliable. And in a world full of distractions, that reliability is your greatest weapon. Because when the excitement wears off and the challenges get real, discipline is what keeps you moving forward. In the end, that's what consistency is all about. Your environment is one of the most powerful and underestimated forces shaping your behavior. Most people try to stay consistent by relying on willpower alone without realizing that their surroundings are working against them. But the truth is, no matter how motivated or disciplined you are, if your environment is filled with distractions, negativity, and misaligned influences, staying consistent becomes a constant uphill battle. On the other hand, when you design your environment intentionally to support your goals and habits, consistency becomes easier, more natural, and more sustainable. The environment is not just your physical space, it's the people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, the sounds, smells, lighting, and even the systems you use daily. All these elements either push you forward or pull you backward. For example, if you're trying to stay focused but your workspace is cluttered and your phone is constantly buzzing, you're inviting inconsistency. If you want to wake up early, but your room is set up to keep you comfortable and lazy, you're making it harder than it needs to be. Success is not just about self-control, it's about self-awareness. You must recognize what's around you and ask, is this helping me or hurting me? One of the best ways to stay consistent is to remove friction, make the right actions easier to do, and make the wrong ones harder. This can be as simple as laying out your workout clothes the night before so you don't have to decide in the morning. It might mean deleting apps that distract you, turning off notifications, or putting your phone in another room while you work. It could mean keeping healthy food visible and junk food out of sight. These small changes have massive ripple effects because they eliminate the need for constant decision-making. And fewer decisions mean fewer chances to slip. Your environment should remind you of your goals, not tempt you away from them. It should be set up to reflect the identity you're trying to build. Want to be a reader? Keep books where you can see them. Want to be a writer? Have your tools ready and your space inviting. Want to work out consistently? Make your gear accessible and your space inviting. When your environment is aligned with your values and routines, it does the heavy lifting for you. It becomes a silent partner in your success. People are a huge part of your environment too. If you spend time around individuals who complain, procrastinate, or make excuses, that energy will eventually rub off on you. But if you surround yourself with people who push themselves, stay accountable, and value discipline, you'll be pulled up to that level almost effortlessly. Energy is contagious. Consistency is contagious. The people in your life are either reinforcing your commitment or quietly undermining it. Choose wisely. Sometimes staying consistent means distancing yourself from those who don't support your growth. Even if it's uncomfortable, your digital environment matters just as much. What you see, hear, and read every day shapes your beliefs and behaviors. Social media feeds, YouTube videos, podcasts, they all plant seeds in your mind. The question is, what are they growing? If you're constantly absorbing content that distracts you, discourages you, or makes you compare yourself to others, you'll feel stuck and inconsistent. But if your digital inputs are uplifting, educational, and aligned with your mission, they'll help you stay focused and inspired. Routines and systems are also part of your environment. If you're waking up every day and having to figure out what to do next, you're wasting precious mental energy. But when you have a set routine, a rhythm that your day follows, it becomes easier to stay consistent without overthinking. Systems create structure, and structure creates freedom. Freedom from decision fatigue, from chaos, and from emotional swings. That structure allows you to focus your energy on doing the work instead of wondering where to start. Building an intentional environment takes effort, but it pays you back every single day. It's not about making things perfect. It's about making them purposeful. Every object, every sound, every person in your space should support the life you're trying to create. And when your environment reflects your intentions, consistency stops being a struggle. It becomes the natural result of the world you've created for yourself. So if you want to be consistent, don't just look inward. Look around. What's in your space? What's in your circle? What's on your screen? And most importantly, what needs to change? Because when your environment is designed for success, staying consistent no longer feels like a fight. It feels like flow. And in that state, you don't just show up. You thrive. Staying consistent can feel overwhelming when you focus too much on how far you still have to go. The distance between where you are and you want to seem so massive that it paralyzes you. That's why one of the most effective ways to stay consistent is to focus on small wins. Small wins are the tiny victories you achieve daily. The quiet progress that isn't flashy, but incredibly powerful. When you learn to recognize and celebrate those wins, you create momentum. And momentum, even when it's small, is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. Most people don't stay consistent because they expect big changes fast. They want instant results, dramatic transformations, and quick validation. But that's not how real growth works. Real growth is subtle, it's slow. It often looks like nothing is happening on the surface, even though major change is occurring underneath. And when you learn to appreciate those subtle signs, the small improvements, the better decisions, the extra 5 minutes of effort, you begin to understand that consistency is less about leaps and more about layers. Every small win is a layer, and over time, those layers build something unshakable. The psychology behind small wins is powerful. Every time you complete a task, no matter how minor, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine, the reward chemical. That chemical hit makes you feel good, encouraged, and motivated to keep going. So by focusing on small, achievable steps, you're training your brain to associate consistency with satisfaction. Instead of feeling burdened by a huge goal, you feel energized by tiny accomplishments. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a big difference in how you perceive progress. Let's say your goal is to write a book. If you only celebrate when the book is finished, you're setting yourself up for months of feeling like a failure. But if you celebrate writing one page today, or even one great paragraph, you're reinforcing the habit of showing up. You're rewarding yourself for consistency, not just completion. That's what builds lasting momentum. And the beautiful thing is, those small wins stack. One paragraph becomes a page. One page becomes a chapter. One chapter becomes a book. But it all starts with recognizing that every little step matters. Small wins also help reduce the pressure that often kills progress. When the bar is set too high, perfectionism kicks in. You feel like it's all or nothing. And if you can't do everything, you do nothing. But when you focus on small wins, you give yourself permission to succeed in increments. You start to believe that progress is possible even on imperfect days, and that belief becomes fuel for more action. The truth is, consistency thrives in low-pressure environments. It doesn't need perfection. It needs persistence. And small wins make persistence feel achievable. Another reason small wins matter is that they provide evidence. They remind you that you're capable, that you're improving, and when doubt creeps in, as it always does, you can look back at those wins and say, I may not be where I want to be yet, but I'm not where I started. That perspective is incredibly grounding. It keeps you from giving up when progress feels invisible. It reminds you that consistency isn't about speed. It's about showing up and stacking small wins until something bigger takes shape. To build consistency through small wins, you need to be intentional. Start each day with a simple question. What's one small thing I can do today to move forward? It doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be aligned with your goals. Then do it no matter how small it feels, do it. And when you do, acknowledge it, write it down, celebrate it. Let it matter, because when you let small wins matter, you create a powerful psychological loop that turns effort into energy. Eventually, those small wins change the way you see yourself. You stop saying things like, I'm trying to be consistent, and start saying, I am consistent. You start to identify as someone who shows up, who makes progress, who honors commitments. And once consistency becomes part of your identity, you no longer need to force it. It becomes automatic. That's the real power of small wins. They don't just move you forward, they transform how you see yourself. So stop waiting for big breakthroughs. Stop chasing the perfect moment. Focus on today, focus on what's within reach. Do the small thing, win the small win, and then do it again tomorrow. Because when you commit to stacking those wins, no matter how small, you build something far greater than a goal. You build unstoppable momentum. And with momentum on your side, staying consistent becomes not just possible, but inevitable. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about consistency is thinking they have to do it all alone. There's this idea that real strength means being completely self-reliant, that asking for help, sharing your struggles, or leaning on someone else is a weakness. But the truth is, accountability is not a sign of weakness. It's a strategy for success. When you invite accountability into your life, through mentors, partners, friends, or even systems, you increase your chances of staying consistent dramatically. Because accountability brings structure, clarity, and most importantly, responsibility. When you know someone else is paying attention to your progress, you show up differently. You're more likely to follow through, more likely to push past resistance, and less likely to quit when things get tough. It's not just about pressure. It's about presence. Knowing that someone else believes in your potential, supports your growth, and will check in with you, powerful sense of commitment. It turns your goals from private intentions into public declarations, and that shift changes everything. Accountability gives your actions weight. It helps prevent excuses from taking control. Because let's be honest, when no one knows your goals, it's easy to skip a day, slack off, or pretend your lack of progress doesn't matter. But when you've told someone, this is what I'm working toward, you've made a promise, not just to yourself, but to them. And breaking that promise doesn't feel good. That discomfort creates motivation even when your energy is low or your emotions are off. It's not about guilt. It's about ownership. When you make your goals known, you claim responsibility for them in a deeper way. The right accountability partner doesn't just hold you to a standard. They help raise it. They encourage you when you're low, challenge you're lazy, and remind you when you started when you feel like giving up. They don't let you settle for excuses, right? Connect, but they also don't shame you for slipping. They understand the struggle because they're walking a similar path. That mutual commitment, two people working on growth together, creates a sense of shared momentum. You realize you're not alone in the grind, and that connection strengthens your resilience. It's important to choose accountability wisely. Not everyone will support your vision. Some people may project their fears onto you, discourage you, or mock your ambition. That's why you must seek out people who get it, people who want to grow, who believe in consistent action, who are also working to improve. Find someone who will be honest with you, not just nice. Someone who will celebrate your wins and call out your excuses, whether it's a coach, a mastermind group, a friend, or even a digital community. That external support becomes a vital part of your consistency. Accountability also works in systems and tools. You don't always need another person. Sometimes you need visibility. That's where progress tracking comes in. Journals, habit trackers, calendar streaks, or even public challenges. All these methods bring structure to your commitment. They make your progress visible and real. When you track something daily, you become more aware of your patterns. You can see where you're slipping, what's working, and how far you've come. And that awareness fuels action. It gives you feedback. It helps you course correct early before inconsistency becomes a habit. Another benefit of accountability is that it teaches you humility. It reminds you that success isn't a solo journey. No one achieves greatness alone. Even the most iconic leaders, athletes, and creators have people around them who keep them focused and grounded. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Asking for help, sharing your goals, And letting someone walk the road with you is a smart move. It builds community, strengthens discipline, and creates a powerful sense of mutual responsibility. To integrate accountability into your consistency plan, start simple. Share your goal with one trusted person. Set a weekly check-in. Track your habits daily and review them weekly. Join a group that shares your vision. Build reminders into your calendar or apps. Whatever you do, make your progress visible and shared, not hidden and forgotten. That external presence will keep you anchored when life gets chaotic and distractions pull you off course. Consistency is never just about motivation or even discipline. It's about designing a life that supports your commitment, and accountability is one of the strongest design elements you can build. It turns good intentions into action. It turns effort into momentum. It turns isolation into partnership. So if you're serious about staying consistent, no matter what, don't try to do it all alone. Let someone in. Let something in. Let accountability become the structure that supports your success. Because when you are seen, supported, and responsible, you become far more powerful than you could ever be alone.